26th of June, it's Live Rumble 2. It's the best in white collar boxing, and it's coming at you live and exclusive on the KO Cup and Seconds Out. We are live from 6:45. You can't miss this. Okay, Peter, so I just wanted to talk about the fight that happened a few hours ago, the match between Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather. Obviously, an interesting bout in Miami. I just want to talk about what that means for boxing, how it all played out. So going into this fight, obviously we had Logan Paul, he's 26 years old. He's a YouTuber with millions and millions of followers, a big influencer. And, coming into this fight, he weighed 189 pounds at the weigh-in. He was very cut. He obviously rehydrated after the fight. You could see when he came into the ring, the six-pack had kind of gone, which is always a bit of a giveaway for the rehydration. He did say there was a clause in the fight that if he weighed anything over 190 pounds, there was a big forfeit for each pound that he weighed over. So he weighed in 189.5, came into the ring at 207 pounds. And was plainly, the much bigger man. Floyd Mayweather weighed in at 155 pounds. Floyd is 44 years old now, and fought 155 pounds. Interestingly enough, in boxing weights, 155 pounds puts him in the middleweight division. The light middleweight division goes up to 154. Logan Paul would have been in the cruiserweight division, but really, you had a cruiserweight against a light middleweight, and you could see from the size of their frames, and obviously, Paul at 26 and Floyd at 44. But the major discrepancy in this, the major thing going into the fight, is obviously Floyd had that stellar career, 50-0, multiple world championships across 5 different weights, professional for 25 years, kind of born into the sport, ingrained in the sport, and really, kind of worked boxing out, an incredible boxer, didn't really take any punishment, and at the top of the sport for an amazing number of years. Whereas obviously Logan is a YouTuber and, has been dabbling in this sport for the last couple of years, had one previous fight against a fellow YouTuber called KSI over 6 rounds. So, but it generated huge interest. And it was a massive event. It was a pay-per-view event. And it was interesting, what people were saying in boxing before this. So you had sort of diametrically opposed views. Mike Tyson kind of exhibited one view because he's been dabbling in this kind of thing himself. He was saying, look, it's putting lots of new eyes on the sport. It's to be applauded. It's a great thing. And then you've got other people like Ricky Hatton who were saying this is absolutely diabolical. It's an insult to the sport. It's an insult to professionals. And Ricky was saying, look at how I campaigned to get a shot at Floyd Mayweather. Beat all these major top contenders, won all these world titles, finally got my shot. And this guy has got, so many million followers on YouTube, so he gets a shot at Floyd Mayweather. And so, that was how it was broken down between these two opposing camps. Personally, I think boxing has always been this strange hybrid of show business and sport. It always has been. Even if we look at Ricky, who could undoubtedly fight, unbelievably so, but his career was kind of turbocharged by his personality. Because people related to his personality, people saw him going to the nightclubs and putting on weight between fights, being a real man of the people, and then training, getting down and putting on these great displays in the ring. Now, without that persona, I don't think Ricky Hatton would have been so big, even with the immeasurable skill that he had. So, I've got some sympathy with the showbiz type of thing. It's almost like, really, we need a new label for this. A bit like, obviously being in this business, I go back, 25 years. You remember when the label White Collar Boxing came out as a sort of prefix to boxing to explain that it was white collar workers, it was office workers having a little dabble and having a bit of fun, with the concept and the sport of boxing. And now we need something like showbiz boxing to explain what these bouts are, so that people don't get confused. But either way, this was a huge event. Coming into it, obviously the interest was, the general consensus with Floyd Mayweather would toy with Logan Paul and get him out of there whenever he wanted. But coming into the bout, the one thing is you can say about this, which makes it slightly interesting. These guys, Logan Paul has huge resources. So even though they've been dabbling in the sport for a couple of years, they can obviously train like full-on professionals. They can employ the best coaches, the best nutritionists, the best chefs, the best, all this type of thing, bring in the best sparring to try and bring them on. So that kind of, in a way, makes it a bit interesting. So this event was set in Miami, and 30,000 people in attendance. And like I say, it was a huge event. And digressing slightly, I'd just like to say, when we talk about the purity of boxing, the wonderful competition of boxing and all that sort of stuff, you know, it does contrast a lot with Josh Taylor against Ramirez 2 weeks ago, because to me, that was the best that boxing can serve up in terms of competition, in terms of, you know, live opponents who beat everyone else, who are in their prime and everything else. And this is a kind of strange anomaly at the other end of the scale. But, you know, we have to contrast it and say, you know, Taylor Ramirez wasn't on pay-per-view in the UK. I know this has been gone over, but the promotion didn't seem that great. It didn't get great viewing figures compared to this showbiz boxing event that was on, you know, Sky pay-per-view in the UK. It was $16.95 in the UK, but, you know, around the world on its major distributor, it was $49.99. $49.99, and it got massive views and has done massive business in the States. So, you know, again, this is the show business with blood thing, and that Mayweather is such an expert at tapping into, and obviously Logan Paul is as well. You know, that's his real sort of, you know, raison d'etre almost, to garner this attention and get these views, and you know, it succeeded. And so we come down to the actual fight, as it were. I mean, it was billed as an exhibition, but it was over 8 rounds. And I think you've got to say, you know, going 8 rounds in a boxing ring is no mean feat. You know, it's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. Anybody who's tried and tested the sport will realise that. I mean, most professionals with a decent amateur background behind them come out and start off in the 4 threes distance, and then go to 6 threes, you know, then 8 threes, finally building up to 12 threes. So to jump straight in at 8 threes, you know, it's quite something. And obviously the thing is, you know, jumping in with a campaigner as experienced as Mayweather, even with the age and weight and reach advantage, you know, boxes like that make you tired because they make you think so much all the time when you're moving. They're doing things you haven't seen before, you know, however much you've trained. And there's always an old adage in boxing, sparring ain't fighting. So even if you brought in all these sparring partners and you're doing 8 rounds in the gym and all this sort of stuff, it's not fighting. So, you know, Logan Paul had not been tempered in the fire at all like Mayweather had. So, you know, I think, you know, you've got to kind of take your hat off to him there. And also, I do think as well, obviously there were no points, so there was no winner, because the only way to win was a knockout or a disqualification. And the fight basically went the distance. Mayweather started off a bit conservatively in the first round, you know, just making Paul miss. And, you know, later on, he sort of steps out really from the 3rd round a bit as Logan started to visibly tire, you know, with the sort of thinking and the pace of the fight. Although he did come in and get a bit of a second wind, there was a lot of holding and grappling from Logan Paul. You know, he was a wrestler in high school. He, you know, and obviously he's got to use his physical advantage. He's got to use any advantage he can to try and close that disparity, you know, in skill and experience. So he did lean on Mayweather a lot. He did pull Mayweather in a lot. You know, I would say the fight wasn't massively interesting. It wasn't, you know, a great spectacle of athletic endeavour. But, you know, it obviously had that interest with these characters in there. And I've got to say, I thought Logan Paul did quite well, really. The argument has come out on Facebook that Mayweather was just carrying him. I don't think Mayweather would do that, really. You know, if he had the opportunity, as he showed, you know, in his last exhibition match, if he'd get you out of there, or get you out of there, why would he stay there and take the risk of taking punishment? And you know, and also with Conor McGregor, I mean, he built that up slow and then obviously finished that back in 2017. So I think if Mayweather's got the chance to get you out of there, he will get you out of there. You know, and I think Logan Paul was just a bit too big. Floyd is 44, maybe he was slowing down a little bit. But you know, I think Logan's survival in a way was very much the victory. And I suppose that also asks, how do I feel about seeing Floyd Mayweather, the great legendary Floyd Mayweather, in there having a bit of a wrestle fest with a YouTuber? And I've got to say to you, Peter, to be honest, I don't mind. You know, I'm not concerned about this. To me, Mayweather's legacy is in those 50 fights. I mean, maybe we'll take out the McGregor fight, the 49 fights before, the 5 weight divisions. You know, what he did with boxing. And also don't forget that he was always very, very good. When he created this money persona, when he won his first world titles, he was Floyd Pretty Boy Mayweather. You know, people were sort of taking notice, but not massively enthused by it. Then he created this money persona. You know, kind of the bad guy that everybody wanted to beat, but nobody could beat. And that's how he made these millions and millions of dollars. You know, and people were watching these fights, which, to be fair, unless you were a boxing purist, often weren't that interesting. He was a safety first fighter, Floyd, defensively very cute, didn't get hit a lot. You know, but he made so much money through this by linking the show business element of boxing with his skill. But Floyd is 44, and to me, he's done his thing. You know, he's had that career. This is separate. This is nothing to do with it. This is his retirement phase. And to be honest with you, I would rather see Floyd Mayweather in these type of fights where he's not real danger of taking punishment. You know, you've got to look at the other side of the coin and what we would consider a more noble pursuit, maybe, you know, that Manny Pacquiao is doing. Now in his early 40s, now scheduled, I think, 21st of August to fight Errol Spence Jr., you know, a real live fighter in his 20s. And I'm a bit worried about that. You know, I mean, I know Pacquiao's great and he will hopefully get away with it and, you know, he's exceptional and all that sort of thing. But when you've got guys in their 40s going against guys in their 20s, it just does make me feel a little bit nervous. You know, again, I think Pacquiao's done his thing and he's a legend. Doesn't need to face these guys, and that's where the damage can occur and where these things can happen. If Floyd Mayweather was selling cars or had a property portfolio or doing something else outside of boxing, as you know, in any other profession, you're a young man, we wouldn't mind. But he's trading on what he knows. He's trading on his skills and his persona and everything else to make, in this fight, $30 million for those 8 rounds of really probably not standing any chance of getting hurt. And, you know, Logan Paul made $15 million. So, you know, massive money for them. And for Mayweather, not really a great deal of risk. So I've got to kind of take my hats off. But, you know, I'm talking about Manny Pacquiao. Also, if you go back and look at Ali, you know, in the later days of his career and the exhibitions against the wrestler, and he did similar things. And, you know, opponents like, you know, Cooperman and so on, who weren't really a threat to him. But then the ill-advised comebacks later against Berbick and Holmes, you know, damage was sustained. And I think Mayweather is avoiding that. And, you know, I think Mayweather's very smart to do that. And why shouldn't he capitalise on his name and his fame? And as I say, I think people only get annoyed with this if they confuse this with top-level competitive boxing. This is, I think we should call showbiz boxing. And so, you know, for that reason, I haven't really got a problem with it. And I think, you know, good luck to them both. I don't think it was a very entertaining fight. You know, I know it had all the hype around it. It made lots of money. And I think it did probably get, you know, new people looking at the sport of boxing. And let's not forget as well, these YouTubers that are getting involved in boxing, you know, they're not going and saying, let's settle our differences with a game of tennis. They're not saying, look, I've just become really interested in chess, you know, because they're saying boxing, it's elemental, it's, you know, it's the ultimate sport, it's the ultimate competition and so on. And, you know, and I believe in that too. And so these guys are saying that, and I think they are bringing interest to the sport. I just think maybe we should suffix it and call it show business boxing. Like we have white collar boxing, professional boxing, amateur boxing. It's a different type of boxing, but like I say, I haven't got a problem with it. I do think it brings eyes to the sport. You know, fair play to Mayweather, 30 million in the bank with no harm done. And, you know, and fair play to Paul as well. Where he goes from here, we'll have to see. But I think it's going to be an interesting development. It's definitely here to stay, Peter. It's a permanent thing. You know, as he was saying at the post-fight press conference, I'm just getting started. I've only just got involved in the sport. There's all sorts of other avenues for him to explore. So we shall see where it goes.